Okay, while I am horrified at the subject matter that I am about to address, this is nevertheless the kind of video that I like to make because I get to just spank people on every side of the aisle. Like I can truly not take either side on this discussion. So there has been a an eruption of controversy in the conservative news sphere concerning two married gay men who are LGBT activists here in the Atlanta area where I live, and they are currently. And by the way, I should pause here and say those who know me know that I am no fan of trigger warnings, and so I would not give one lightly. But this is going to involve the discussion of some very real and very disturbing topics, especially concerning sexual assault. And if that's going to be difficult for you, I highly encourage you to jump ship now while you still have the chance. Anyway, so two LGBT activists, a married couple here in the Atlanta area, are arrested and accused of doing a number of heinous things. The conservative news outlet Town Hall has been covering this matter extensively. There has been a profound lack of coverage here in Georgia, which is very concerning to me. I've been able to find a small handful of news items in the local circuit, and that's been about it. So anyway, I'll read. This is reading from one of the town hall articles on this matter. A months long town hall investigation reveals disturbing new details about the affluent LGBTQ activist couple accused of sodomizing their young adopted sons, now ages 9 and 11, and distributing homemade child pornography of the sexual abuse. Half a year after the shocking story made national news, Town Hall is the only outlet following up on the criminal case. In Georgia, there has since been zero headlines written about it. We found that it's far, far worse than what was first reported. Not only did the married men allegedly rape the two boys who were adopted through a Christian special needs adoption agency, they were pimping out their children to nearby pedophiles in the Atlanta area suburbs, Town Hall's follow-up investigation discovered. Recorded jailhouse calls, a trove of never-before-seen court documents, and testimony from a family member. I'm sorry, I just opened the link by mistake. And testimony from a family member who spoke exclusively with Town Hall uncovered the extent of the physical and emotional trauma the two elementary school-aged brothers endured, as well as the red flags that the state overlooked during the same-sex couple's faster-than-expected adoption process. As Town Hall reported in August, the suspects were darlings of the LGBTQ media. They were part of an anti-gay hate campaign promoting hashtag No Hate and Out magazine, which holds the nation's highest circulation among LGBTQ monthly publications, has repeatedly asked them if the website's Pride page can feature their photos taken at the Atlanta Pride Parade. Charges: the adoptive father's 33-year-old government worker William Dale Zulock Jr. and 35-year-old banker Zachary Jacoby Zulock, who was previously accused of raping a child from Oxford, Georgia, have been indicted by a grand jury on charges of incest, aggravated sodomy, aggravated child molestation, felony exploitation of children, and felony prostitution of a minor. William and Zachary are each facing over 9 life sentences. They've pleaded not guilty. Okay, so, and then I'll go ahead and give you the gory details. According to a copy of the 17-count indictment Town Hall has obtained, the adoptive dads allegedly performed oral sex on both boys, forced the children to perform oral sex on them, and anally raped their sons. In at least one instance, the anal rape injured the older Zulock child, who just turned 11 years old in mid-December. Court records indicate that the child's sexual abuse stretches back to as early as late 2019 and intensified in January 2021, March 2022, and December 2021 as the offense dates are listed. The brothers were enrolled in 3rd and 4th grade respectively. Both men, before the men were caught in a midnight July bust at the Zulock mansion, which ended with Zachary tackled to the ground and William hauled out of the house naked by armed officers. The two Zulock boys whose faces, I'm sorry, that's a photo caption. Anyway, William admitted to forcing his 11-year-old son to perform an act of sodomy, aka oral copulation, on him with the intent to satisfy his own sexual desire, reads a sworn affidavit filed in support of William's overnight arrest back on July 27th. Town Hall has redacted the children's names to protect the identities of underage victims. So they have the affidavit there. An updated criminal affidavit says that, so at this point I'm just going to stop because it just goes on and on. I'll put a link to the overall article, but it just gets more and more nauseating as it goes. And, it's funny, every so often people like to try to pick at me for my demeanor in my videos, and they'll say things like, gosh, you sure seemed upset or uncomfortable when you read that article or something like that. And it's like, in this case, I'm like, yeah, no shit. I readily admit that that's disturbing, deeply disturbing. Okay, so I'm going to give you my breakdown of the cultural failures within not the whole of the LGBT community, but this kind of bizarre activist branch that's emerged recently. I'm going to give you my thoughts on that, put a pin in it, because first I'm going to talk about the conservative response. And the folks over at the Daily Wire have, of course, been crowing about how both of these guys need to be executed. And Matt Walsh has been outstanding among them for going on and on about how it's important that they be publicly executed. And I watched his commentary on the matter, and he says that they need to be publicly executed. And his rationale for having them be publicly executed is twofold. First, he points out that they are facing 9 life sentences each, and that he doesn't understand why he doesn't understand the purpose of imposing 9 life sentences. And by his logic, if 1 life sentence, this is quoting him directly, he argues that if 1 life sentence is not good enough, then the logical next choice would be the death penalty. Now, I am opposed to the death penalty for anybody. Completely, I don't believe in giving the government the power to kill its citizens, with the only exception being emergency situations like active shooters and that kind of thing. And so, in principle, I am opposed to the death penalty, but I am even more opposed to Matt Walsh's calls for it to be made public. Matt Walsh is a self-described theocratic fascist, and make no mistake, he's not joking around about that. His politics are fascistic, and his calls to have the executions be done in public are a perfect example of that. He argues that the executions ought to be done publicly because that would show and demonstrate to the people of the United States that that this sort of thing will not be tolerated, and that this is what the government thinks of cretins who do things like this and that sort of thing, and that message needs to be sent to the people to reassure them and to comfort them. Well, here's the thing. Anybody, absolutely without exception, everybody who is in favor of handing the government more power than it ought to have begins from a standpoint of saying that the government needs to be sending these reassuring messages to people, that they need to be imposing the outer extremes of their power with the intention of comforting the people and giving them reassurance that they're in command and don't worry, we've got this and we're protecting you and all of that. And that is the wolf in sheep's clothing that begins the process of moving out of a space of a government that protects human rights and into a space of a government that imposes its will on you, and a government that is deeply and truly fascistic in nature, that is a government that acts against the people rather than for them. And the thing about public execution, or the reason, and it's so interesting to me that these people at the Daily Wired who tout themselves as being these great bastions of insight into matters of public policy fail to understand basic concepts about public policy. They have these very pie in the sky notions about how they think it ought to work, but they don't seem to understand why things work the way they do or why things are done the way they do. And the reason we don't have public executions is the reason executions are done privately, or one of the reasons executions are done privately and out of the view of the public, is because that way they cannot be used as a tool of intimidation against the public. And that's very funny to me because Matt Walsh is a staunch Roman Catholic, and as such, worships Jesus Christ as his Lord and Savior. Jesus Christ is arguably history's most well-known, most legendary victim of public execution. And as the Catholic Bishop Robert Barron correctly pointed out, the reason that crucifixion was the preferred execution method of the Roman government was because it carried with it the underlying message to the people of, this is what happens to you if you cross us, pun intended. And so that is why we don't carry out acts of justice in public view. That's why we don't have public floggings. That's why we don't have public hangings anymore and that sort of thing, and public decapitations, because we are not using part of living in a free society is that the government uses its authority to impose punishment only to enact punishment on the individuals in question, not to send out chilling messages about the extent of its authority to the people at large. The other thing Matt Walsh fails to understand is why these guys are facing 9 life sentences. He said in his commentary that might mean something if the accused were cats. But here's the reason. Okay, and again, it's amazing that they don't understand these things, or at least pretend not to. The reason that they're facing 9 life sentences is because the government cannot impose indefinite punishment on people. A life sentence carries a finite amount of time. In the state of Georgia, it's 60 years. And granted, it is unlikely that men in their middle 30s will survive into their mid 90s, but by imposing, there's 2 reasons that they're facing multiple life sentences. One, because they're accused of multiple crimes, all of which they have to be tried for, and all of which carry the penalty of 9 life sentences. And the other reason is that by stacking life sentences on top of each other, it guarantees that the person stays in jail until they die. These guys are facing 9 life sentences. There's no way they're going to live 540 more years. So they will, by making them serve multiple life sentences back to back, it guarantees that they will die in prison. It is so utterly bizarre. It never fails. I did a video not too long ago about the recent arrest of Andrew Tate, and, it's amazing. Candace Owens gets up there and bloviates about Andrew Tate's arrest with absolutely no idea why the police have done any of the things they've done with regards to Andrew Tate. She can only perceive this as the government persecuting, or the Romanian government persecuting a wholly innocent man, and she believes that he's innocent because she talked to him for 5 minutes one time and he was cordial to her. Literally, that's why. Go watch the video. Anyway, so I want to comment on that. It's just amazing. Like, the Daily Wire touts itself as this new bastion of intellectual conservatism, and then they just stumble all over basic concepts about how the world works and how society is structured the way it is and everything. Even if it's not, don't get me wrong, even if it's not, even if the functional machinations of society don't fit within your theocratic fascist ideal of how you want things to work. You can at least try to endeavor to understand why they work the way they do. And, at the end of the day, Matt Walsh is the kind of person that if he were alive in the time of Jesus Christ, he would not have been a Christian. He would have been a Roman soldier. And he would have believed that Nero or whoever the ruling force in Rome at the time was, he would have worshipped that as his god, and he would have been out there lashing Jesus Christ and lynching Christians as was the practice at the time. Anyway, so now I want to bring it around to the gay culture itself, because I'm going to say something that is going to sound highly critical of gay culture, but it actually is an important thing for gay culture to, and I'm going to say gay because the whole alphabet thing is getting stupid. It's an important thing for gay culture to understand in general. So Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh and the other Daily Wire people that are commenting on this issue, they are framing it as gay culture as this being like the inevitable outgrowth of a gay culture that never should have been, as they argue, should never have been permitted to exist in the first place, that this was the inevitable end result. It's not. Here's the thing. The gay culture began, the public face of gay culture began with a very libertarian mindset, essentially. It was, we want to live our lives, we want to live our lives peacefully, we want to enjoy the same rights and freedoms that anyone who does not share our proclivities would be entitled to, and that's it. We just want to live our lives and get on about our business. That is a totally reasonable position, and it is a position that fosters cultural acceptance, because, there's the old saying that good fences make good neighbors, and there's truth to that. If you have a culture that is saying, we're not trying to come after you, we're not trying to impose on you at all, we just want to live our lives and get on with life, if people in the world, the individual persons out in the world, encounter people living that lifestyle, they can say, oh, okay, yeah, it's just their thing. They're not pushing it on me. We're good. I can accept this. I can live with these people. That's the beginning of transitioning from tolerance to acceptance. What the problem that has come along in recent years is what we would define as intersectionality. And the whole concept, briefly put, the whole concept of intersectionality holds that there are degrees of societal oppression by which certain individuals, on the basis of their affiliation with oppressed groups, are able to hold a sort of lordship over people who don't fall into those groups, and are able to kind of preach to them, witness to them, educate them in a way that no other group could. So by the rules of intersectionality, any black person is entitled to present themselves as an authority on racism, and can speak in an educational capacity to any white person about the nature and reality of racism. No white person can possibly have any insight into the matter, and the only thing they can do is shut up and vote for who they're told to vote for, donate money to the organizations they're told to donate money to, et cetera, et cetera. That's how intersectionality applies itself to the issue of racism. There are other obvious ones that come along where any woman can lecture any man on the nature of sexism, any trans person can lecture any non-trans person on the nature of transphobia, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, if you fall into one of these groups, you become a sort of philosopher king, a sort of priest king of a new bastion of enlightenment to be unloaded on the people who don't fall into that group. And this sort of thing, and bear with me here, this sort of thing that we're talking about, this heinous, horrible act that these guys did, is not an outgrowth of gay culture. It's not an outgrowth of activist culture. It's an outgrowth of that mentality that convinces people that if you are a vocal representative of a group, you become a priest king. You become a philosopher king. You become somebody who brings enlightenment to the ignorant and unwashed masses. And when you put yourself in, when you put people in, when you create that atmosphere, you put people into that mindset, you are going to inevitably invite people that are going to abuse that authority for the indulgence of their own perversions, their own twisted desires, and that sort of thing. They're going to use it as a means to manipulate people. They're going to use the liberties afforded to them by that priest king status as a means to manipulate and abuse and hurt people. And the proof of this is the very organization that Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and most of the Daily Wire staff swear their allegiance to, which is the Roman Catholic Church. Look at the sex abuse scandals that emerged from the Roman Catholic Church that have persisted for years. You know, people thought that the Marquis de Sade was some sort of lunatic blasphemer with his writings, when like 120 Days of Sodom, when in reality he was just satirizing the very abuses of power that have persisted throughout hierarchical societies since the beginning of time. And so that, using the Catholic Church as an example of that, you know, the Catholic Church has as its core doctrine some very beautiful and very wonderful things. Beliefs about charity and compassion and humility and empathy and support and love for your fellow man, and looking out for one another and helping each other along the way, and some very beautiful, very kind-hearted things. Looking at that doctrine, you would not think that would be the mindset of people that would set themselves up in a position to abuse and molest and rape children. But there was this tremendous outgrowth. The Catholic sex abuse scandals were this tremendous outgrowth of that, and the reason being that when you set up the priests, you set up a group of people that are uniquely qualified to impart ideas about goodness and wisdom and everything else and enlightenment onto the ignorant masses. Inevitably, you're going to have people who use that authority to beguile and ensnare and manipulate and mistreat innocent people. That is what happened here. And if you doubt that this is where I'm coming from, I want to give you an example of this is a meme that circulated for a while, or it's here posted from June 27th, 2021, but I swear I saw it before that. Anyway, this is an example of the kind of attitude that I'm talking about that gave rise to this sort of thing. The meme goes, "Things queer culture teaches you that straight culture doesn't." Okay, here they are. You don't have to get married if you don't want to. You don't have to have kids if you don't want to. It's nobody's job to flirt with you or be flirted with. If you're into someone, do the work and tell them. People will judge you and reject you without knowing you. This isn't your fault. You're not the broken one. Your clothing and hair and other style choices are to make you feel good first and foremost. Signaling to your people is the secondary job of hair and clothes, but don't dress for them. Be you, and they'll see it. Anyone who judges you badly for your hair and clothes is not your people and can fuck off. Physical affection in public is an act of deliberate courage. Family is a matter of choice. Loyalty is a two-way street. Mental health is important and it's hard. Anxiety and depression are natural reactions to the world. Sensitivity isn't weakness, it just means you pay attention. People who think sex only means penis in a vagina deserve pity. And they don't deserve better sex, just pity. Everyone who's interesting reinvented themselves after their world fell apart, just like you did. Community is a safety net from an unfair world. Let it catch you when you need it. Catch others when you can. Don't live your life for anyone else's happiness. Live for your own and share it. Okay, not one of those concepts is at all unique to gay culture, to queer culture. Not one of those concepts. And certainly there are no shortage of heterosexual people that can communicate all of those values to you. And by the way, the idea that queer culture teaches you that anyone who judges you badly for your hair and clothes is not your people and can fuck off, that one in particular, it's like, oh my God, have you never been to a gay bar? Seriously. You're not getting in with those, sweetie. I mean, seriously, have you never been to a gay bar? You think that gay culture, and I say this as someone who's spent time in it and has been surrounded by it, you think that gays don't judge each other? You think that gay people don't judge each other for their fashion choices? Oh my God. And then all of these other things like, and this one, another one, people who think sex only means a penis and a vagina deserve pity. Homosexuals did not invent the idea of sticking the penis in other orifices. Sorry. I mean, this is ridiculous. Anyway, all of those things, none of those things are unique to queer culture. Those are all just basic affirmations about personal integrity and self-respect that are common throughout the world. But there's this trend within gay culture to argue that gay culture is this unique unique bastion of love and tolerance and respect for human dignity, etc., etc., that somehow gay culture is that gay activists, which these guys define themselves as, that gay activists are not just people that are working for gay people to be able to live their lives and live their lives and enjoy their relationships and go about their lives with the same protection as everybody else. Now it's a thing of they want to now it's a thing of that this is the group that's going to teach you all of these things about love and compassion and respect and personal integrity and all of that. And the activists, when they define themselves as activists in this context, what they are doing is defining themselves as priest kings. They are defining themselves as the philosopher kings that are going to impart the wisdom and enlightenment on the ignorant masses. And that mindset, that grandiose mindset, that, irrespective of where it's applied, whether it's applied to gay culture or it's applied to Christianity or it's applied to anything else across the board, that mindset right there is going to be a welcoming haven for scumbags like these guys, because you are giving them this pseudo-mystical position of authority that they can use to exploit and manipulate weak and vulnerable individuals. So these guys are not an outgrowth of gay culture. They are an outgrowth, these guys are not an outgrowth of gay culture. They are an outgrowth of the same exploitation and manipulation of mystical institutions and the authority of purveyors of mysticism that have existed since time immemorial. And I want to be clear, I'm not an atheist. I am a Christian. I'm an Episcopalian. But part of the reason I prefer the Episcopal Church is because we're being guided by people who are educated about spirituality, educated about Scripture, and educated about the best and most compelling ways to preach and impart the Word of God. But they are not themselves uniquely in some sort of divine space that places them fully above us in terms of the enlightenment that they have to offer. They don't. It does not. I'm not saying that within the long history of the Episcopal Church there's never been an abuse of power, but at least it works towards a community where that abuse of power is not as possible and not as easily exploited. And so that's the reality of what we need to get out of, or what the gay community needs to get out of its ranks, is assholes like these that are using and exploiting their roles as activists to act like priest kings rather than just activists of a reasonable libertarian position on the reality of gay culture. So anyway, like I said, I like making. While I hate that, I truly hate that these two young boys have been abused in this way, and that these men have done these things, and I say that because yes, they are innocent until proven guilty before the bar of law, but there's such an extraordinary pile of evidence against them that I'm willing to go forward on the notion that they are guilty and be corrected, acknowledge correction later if that in the seemingly unlikely event that would occur. But anyway, I do, however, like making videos like these because I love it anytime I have an opportunity to say both the left and the right are being wrong here. All right, anyway, have a good night.